Hey guys, tonight we journey back to an age of wooden hulls, snapping canvas sails, and salt-crusted uniforms. You're about to step into the soaked boots of one man who, against all logic and a great deal of cannon fire, survived not one, not two, but 3 shipwrecks during a single war. You can practically smell the gunpowder and hear the slap of waves against oak. And just so you know, most sailors don't even make it through one of these. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from? And what time is it in your part of the world? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're 19. The war is heating up. Napoleon's ambition is spreading like wildfire across Europe, and Britain is scrambling to keep up. You've just been posted to the HMS Eagle, a proud 74-gun ship of the line. She creaks like a tired man's knees, but moves with surprising grace when the wind is right. You think she's invincible? Everyone does. You're below deck, sharpening a blade you probably won't use. It's more of a comfort object, really. Around you, hammocks sway gently, and the air is thick with salt, tar, and unwashed sailors. Welcome to 1804. It's just after dawn when the lookout shouts French frigates on the horizon. The captain gives orders like a man swatting flies, and suddenly the world is nothing but sails unfurling, men scrambling, and the thunder of your own heartbeat. Battle on the sea isn't what the paintings show you. It's chaos. You can't hear your own thoughts over the roar of cannon and the screams of the wounded. Splinters the size of daggers whiz past like angry wasps. You duck instinctively, clutching that blade tighter. The first cannonball hits midship. Not a gentle splash in the side. Mind you, a monstrous, tearing impact that flings sailors across the deck like rag dolls. Smoke chokes your lungs. You crawl, blind and coughing, toward the stairs. Then comes the sound you'll never forget. Wood shattering beneath your feet. Not above, not beside, but below. The deck is caving in. You don't fall. You sink as if the ocean has opened its jaws beneath the ship to swallow you whole. Cold salt water stabs your skin like 1,000 knives. Your body knows what your mind hasn't processed, yet the eagle is dying. You kick hard, surfacing just long enough to see the ship listing violently, sails collapsing in a final, broken sigh. Men scream for help. Some are already gone, pulled under by wreckage or the unforgiving swirl of undertow. One sailor clings to a floating barrel. Another just floats, oddly peaceful, face down. You grab the remains of a hatch and hold on like your life depends on it, because it absolutely does. The sun, stupidly bright and cheerful, beats down on the floating aftermath of violence. A seagull lands on a nearby plank and stares at you, totally unimpressed by your mortal peril. Hours pass. Eventually, a merchant cutter, British, by sheer cosmic luck, spots the wreckage and plucks survivors from the sea like soggy seaweed. You climb aboard with shredded hands and no shoes. Someone offers you a dry biscuit. You eat it, even though your teeth are still chattering. It tastes like sawdust and mercy. Later, wrapped in a blanket, you hear the first mutterings of the word jinx. Sailors are notoriously superstitious. You've survived a wreck. that makes you lucky or dangerous, depending on who's talking. Historically, this wasn't unusual. The Royal Navy lost dozens of ships to battle, weather, or simple bad design during the Napoleonic Wars. Some were poorly built, others simply outmatched. But what's fringe-worthy here, some crews believed painting eyes on a ship's hull would help it see danger and avoid it. The Eagle had no such decorations. Go figure. Later that night, while staring at the stars from the cutter's deck, you realize something odd. You don't feel afraid anymore. You should. You're exhausted, bruised, and have seen more death than a 19-year-old should. But instead, there's a strange calm. Maybe it's shock. Maybe it's that part of your brain that's just grateful to be breathing. Or maybe you've glimpsed something deeper, a new shape in your soul carved by salt and fire. Historians still argue whether some of these early naval disasters were due more to French cunning or British arrogance. Many records were lost or polished to keep morale high. But what matters right now is this: you're alive. You're alive, and you're already on your way to another assignment. Because, of course, the war isn't waiting for you to catch your breath. You arrive in Malta with lips still cracked from sea salt and memories still raw from the Eagle's last breath. Your uniform's been replaced, your name scratched onto a new roster, and your fate tied now to the HMS Defiance. A fitting name, really, because what are you if not Defiance incarnate, still breathing when you probably shouldn't be? The Defiance is older than the Eagle, but stockier, like a boxer past his prime who still knows how to throw a punch. She's stationed in the Mediterranean warm breezes, sapphire waters, and the ever-present shadow of French skirmishers lurking just beyond the horizon. You want to believe it'll be different this time, that lightning and cannonballs don't strike twice, but they do. You've barely been aboard a fortnight when it happens. First, let's set the scene. You're on patrol, gliding between rocky islands that rise out of the sea like ancient sentinels. The decks are quiet. The crew whispers. Something in the air feels tight. Maybe it's the change in wind or the silence of birds. One of the older sailors crosses himself without saying why. Then a glint. The lookout yells, "Enemy sails." You don't panic this time. No, not anymore. You've learned a strange kind of detachment, like your body knows the dance and is already moving. Load the guns, cut the jib, man the port cannon. It's not a full-scale battle, more like a savage slap across the cheek. The French send 2 ships darting in from behind a cliff wall. You feel the first impact in your chest before your ears register the sound. Then chaos again, always chaos. You're on powder detail this time, running gunpowder kegs from the hold to the cannons like you're playing some nightmarish relay race. The air smells like burning rope and iron. You dodge falling timbers and half wish for the comforting sting of salt water again. Then the magazine where the gunpowder is stored takes a direct hit. Not a bullseye, just close enough. The explosion isn't cinematic. It doesn't bloom into fireballs like in the movies. It's blunt, a sickening crunch of wood and bone and black powder igniting in a muffled, horrifying cough. The deck lifts beneath you like a wild horse and throws you against a bulkhead. When you blink your eyes open, smoke coils thick as cotton around your face. You try to stand, fail, crawl instead. You hear screams not loud, but desperate, like whispers from a dream. The ship is turning, wounded, not sinking, but limping hard. You know the look. Amazingly, the crew fights to keep her afloat. The French retreat. They weren't aiming to sink her just to scare, to wound, to make a point. It works. By some miracle, and maybe your now notorious presence, the Defiance doesn't sink. Not yet. She makes it back to port under her own power. Barely. But she's not seaworthy anymore. The hull's cracked. Morale's shattered, and you're reassigned. Again. You'd think people would stop putting you on ships by now. Here's the thing, the British Navy needs bodies. Young ones. Breathing ones. Superstitions are one thing. Logistics are another. So despite side glances and muttered oaths, you're handed new boots, new papers, and a new ship. But something's changed in you. Back at the Malta garrison, in the days before reassignment, you wander. You sit under olive trees that look 1,000 years old and breathe air thick with jasmine. You sip bitter coffee with lemon. You see children playing in alleyways, dodging goats and barefoot elders. And you write, just a little, a letter to no one, really. Maybe your mother, though you won't send it. You write second ship hit. This one didn't sink. Felt like it should have. I think I should feel lucky. I feel hollow, like something's been scraped out. Historians still argue whether the Defiance's survival was due to expert seamanship or sheer French miscalculation. Naval logs are murky. The damage reports uneven. One thing's certain, it was enough to sideline the ship and to put you right back into Neptune's dice cup. Here's your quirky tidbit. For the night sailors of this era believed whistling on deck could summon bad luck or worse, a storm after Malta. Not one sailor let out even a hum around you. You, with your tangle of narrow escapes and smoke-streaked clothes. They'd sooner play dice with the devil than bunk near your hammock. When your new posting is announced, the HMS Scorpion, a sleek sloop known more for speed than muscle, you don't react. Not outwardly. Inside, though, there's that flutter again, that quiet, gnawing fear, the fear that the sea knows your name now, and worse, it might not be done calling it. You step aboard the HMS Scorpion with boots barely dry and a stare that now lingers a second too long on lifeboats. She's smaller than your last ship's faster, yes, but you can't help noticing how little stands between you and the sea. Just a few inches of timber and what you hope is good luck, though that's been in short supply lately. The Scorpion is posted to run coastal scouting missions and relay dispatches between larger ships in the Adriatic. It's quieter duty, technically. No broadside battles or glory-chasing admirals barking speeches from the quarterdeck. Just the wind, your orders, and the occasional suspicious sail on the horizon. The crew is young. Some boys barely need to shave. You hear one whisper, "That's him." The moment you board, a second mutters, "3 ships that can't be real." They fall silent when you walk past. You don't correct them. You don't say that technically it's only 2 wrecks. You don't say anything. You just get to work. There's comfort in routine. Rope work, rigging checks, knots tied so well they could hold together kingdoms. You take up the night watch sometimes, just to be alone. The stars are easier company than the men these days. They don't flinch when you cough or avoid your eyes when you reach for a mug. You've been sailing for weeks when it starts. First, a gentle shift in the wind, then darker clouds bleeding across the sky like spilled ink. By evening, the sea is no longer your partner. It's something older, meaner, a god awakened. You try to sleep but can't. The timbers moan, sails snap. The scorpion bucks like a wild animal, trying to throw its riders. Orders are shouted, barely audible above the rising roar. Then lightning, blinding, so close. It seems to crack the air in two. You hear the mast splinter, and in your gut, you know the storm has found you. The ship veers dangerously, caught in a rogue swell that lifts her, shudders, and slams her down like a toy tossed by a tantrum. You grip the railing, hands aching. Rain stings like needles. Somewhere to your left, a man screams, then vanishes overboard. Just gone. The tillers snapped, rigging flies loose. The bow grinds hard into something solid. You feel it, like bone hitting bone. Rock, coastal, jagged. You've drifted too close to land, and not the kind you want to visit. Black cliffs loom just feet away. The scorpion shudders again, then lists. This isn't a battle, it's a punishment. You scramble below deck, trying to help patch leaks. The pump crew is working like mad, but it's not enough. Water's coming in faster than they can send it out. The lantern light flickers, casting ghostly shadows across soaked faces. You hear the carpenter shout. She's tearing from the hull. Above, the storm howls like it knows your name. The sea wants you again. Eventually, the call comes, abandon ship. You don't hesitate. There's no time. You and a half dozen others make it to a longboat, just one, and row like demons away from the wreck. Behind you, the scorpion disappears in pieces. Not a dramatic final sink, just a slow crumble into the dark water, dragged under by the same hands that have tried to take you twice before. Hours pass. The storm recedes. You find a rocky inlet. Sleep in shifts under oiled cloth and driftwood. Someone jokes softly, bitterly, that if you make it home, you should open a tavern called the Drowned Sailor. No one laughs. By morning, the sun rises over a jagged coastline. You're somewhere near Albania. Maybe it smells like pine sap and salt. The air is eerily calm. You watch gulls circle above the waves and wonder if they recognize you by now. Eventually, a merchant brig rescues you and the few other survivors. They feed you, stare at you. One old sailor makes the sign against evil and walks away. Another says, "That's the third one, isn't it?" You don't answer. Historians still argue whether the Scorpion's wreck was due to bad navigation, sabotage, or the sheer unpredictability of Adriatic storms. Some suggest her charts were outdated. Others whisper the more outlandish version that her compass spun wildly that night, like the sea wanted her confused. Here's your fringe fact of the night some old seafarers believed in weather witches, spirits, or people who could summon storms just by cursing a ship. One sailor aboard the Scorpion even accused a stowaway of having storm eyes. He was delirious, or maybe just terrified. Later, sitting alone on the merchant deck, you finger a splinter you pulled from your palm. A keepsake, maybe something to prove again that you were there, that you outlasted it. Again, there's a strange ache in your chest now, not just fear or fatigues, something heavier, not guilt, exactly, but an isolation that grows with every sinking ship. It's not just survival anymore, it's becoming who you are. You're not even surprised when the Admiralty sends for you again. This time, The orders arrive in a sealed envelope with your name scrawled like an afterthought. You don't open it right away. Instead, you hold it under the dim oil lamp in your temporary bunk, its flickering light casting long shadows on the canvas walls. The envelope is dry, neat, and yet you feel as though it carries a curse. Inside, new orders, new ship, new coastline. You trace the name at the bottom, HMS Unity. Oh, the irony. You board her in Naples, where the sun bakes the stone docks and the smell of wine and roasting lamb wafts through the city streets. It's a beautiful place to begin again. If you ignore the whispering sailors and the second mate who won't meet your eyes, you overhear him say it, low and half joking. He's the Jonah of the Royal Navy. You try not to let it dig under your skin, but it does, like everything else these days. Still, the Unity is sturdy. She's a corvette, a step between speed and might. Her copper-bottom hull gleams. Her cannons are freshly polished, and the captain surprisingly kind. He even offers you a choice bunk, citing your experience. You decline. You choose one near the deck hatch. Easier exit, should history repeat itself. And oh, does it try? At first, it's uneventful. Weeks pass. You eat with the crew, laugh once or twice at terrible sea shanties, even sketch the coastline of Corsica one dreamy afternoon. You start to wonder, maybe, that your luck's turned. You even write another letter home. This time, you plan to send it, but then the fever starts. Not yours. Not yet. One sailor, then another, sweating, shaking, whispering nonsense in the middle of the night. The ship's doctor blames the water, or the rats, or both. They start tossing barrels overboard and scrubbing the decks with vinegar. But the sickness spreads fast. You keep to yourself, hoping distance is protection. You sleep light. You watch. And then, one dawn, the lookout cries out not in alarm, but in wonder. A French frigate, listing oddly, drifting without sails. The captain decides to investigate. Maybe it's a trap. Maybe it's abandoned. Maybe there's a prize aboard, a chance at a letter of marque and glory. You're assigned to the boarding party. So now, here you are, again, rowing across a pale blue stretch of water towards something that should probably be left alone. The frigate looms like a carcass. The smell hits first sour, sharp, and unmistakable. Death. You board her quietly. No resistance, no sound. The deck is stained. The sails hang in tatters. And there's not a soul in sight. At least, not standing. Below decks, you find them. The crew, or what's left, faces frozen in agony, mouths open mid-scream, and worst of all, no wounds. Just death, fast, furious, unexplained. The doctor mutters something about yellow fever, but you remember one sailor whispering in Naples about the curse of the drifting dead. Sailors have stories for everything. You return to the Unity with your head full of images you wish you hadn't seen, and within 2 days, the sickness has doubled. The captain makes a call quarantine. He directs the ship toward a small, uninhabited island west of Sardinia. Just a strip of sand and shrubs, enough to anchor and pray. You feel the tension coil in every rope, every boot step on deck. On the second night, the storm hits, because of course it does. It arrives with no warning. The sky doesn't gray, it blackens. Rain slams the deck like fists. The Unity strains against her anchors, but they don't hold. She twists, crashes sideways, and then sickeningly tips hard toward the rocks. You're thrown against the rail, your shoulder howling. You try to rise, can't. And then you hear it, the groan of timber giving way. The sound ships make right before they die. Water pours in from a cracked hull seam. Men scream, some in fever, some in panic. Lanterns crash and snuff out. You're suddenly moving in darkness, feeling your way by memory and instinct. You reach the deck in time to see the main mast tilt like a falling tree. Then snap. The ship doesn't sink all at once. She breaks, rips apart like wet paper on jagged rocks, timbers splintering, lifeboats crushed before they can even be lowered. You dive no choice. Salt water floods your ears, your lungs, your thoughts. When you surface, the island is a smudge of black ahead. You swim. You swim harder than you ever have, even as your limbs tremble, even as you cough seawater and rage and something like laughter, because again, it's happening again. You crawl onto shore with only the shirt on your back, your pockets empty, and your hands bloodied from coral. Of the 100 men aboard, only 17 make it to shore alive. 17. You are one of them. Historians still argue whether the Unity's destruction was due to the storm, the weakened hull, or most controversially, the decision to board that drifting French ship. There are no surviving logs, just the word of 17 shaky sailors and a whole lot of speculation. Here's your quirky fact sailors used to call uncharted islands God's chess pieces, places the sea moved at will, to punish or to protect. This island it protects. The survivors stay there for nearly a week, foraging berries, catching rain in tarps, nursing the sick and wounded. One night, sitting by the dying embers of a fire made from splintered ship parts, a fellow survivor looks at you and says, "I think you're cursed." You don't argue. You just stare into the flames and whisper, "I know. The nightmares come every night now." You wake sweating, heart racing. Your dreams are not of drowning, but of surviving. And in some ways, that's worse. The sea has spat you out again. But this time, you linger longer on dry land. The island you're marooned on, unnamed, unmarked, and unbothered by the wider world, is your reluctant home for almost 2 weeks. You sleep beneath a canopy of twisted pines. You drink rainwater collected in your shoes. One man breaks a toe kicking driftwood out of frustration. You patch him up with strips torn from your own shirt. You are sunburned, scarred, alive, when rescue finally arrives. A merchant brig flying the Union Jack. You don't wave, shout, or cry. You just stand there, arms crossed, squinting into the sunlight as if daring the ship to turn around. It doesn't. They lower a dinghy, offer water, bread, disbelief, back in Malta, where the survivors are landed and debriefed. You're not welcomed as a hero. No one wants to shake your hand. The naval clerks record your story with stone faces. Your commanding officer won't even meet your eyes. By now, your name carries weight, but not the good kind. Sailors refuse to bunk with you. Captains quietly request you be reassigned. You're given shore leave, but everyone knows what it really is, a polite exile. They don't know what to do with you. You're a problem wrapped in a myth wearing a uniform. So you wander. You take long walks through the sun-bleached limestone alleys of Valletta. You sit on the harbor steps, watching ships come and go. Once, you catch your reflection in the rippling water and think, is that me, or just some ghost of the man I used to be? You meet a priest who invites you in for tea. He doesn't ask about the wrecks. Instead, he offers you something stranger, a story about a sailor from centuries past who survived 4 sinkings and was eventually made a saint. You don't believe him, but you nod along. Later, you look it up. Nothing comes up. Maybe he made it up just for you. But here's a real historical footnote. There was a Portuguese navigator, Fernão Lopes, who spent years as a hermit on the island of St. Helena. After a string of brutal events at sea, people said he was cursed. 2. You wonder if solitude was his choice, or just the only option left. You try to write home again. You even start the letter, dear, and stop. Who are you writing to? No one's waiting anymore. They stopped waiting after the second wreck. You never even mailed the 3rd letter, just tucked it into your jacket and watched it dissolve into pulp during the storm. One night, while sitting on the fortress walls, you overhear a group of junior officers talking. One of them says, "He's a bad omen. Should have gone down with the last one." You don't flinch. You don't even turn. You just whisper, "I tried." Despite all this, the sea is not done with you. You think you'll never set foot on a ship again. And for a time, it seems true. But then war calls louder. Britain needs experienced sailors desperately. There's a new fleet forming. They're heading toward the Ionian Islands, toward skirmishes thick with risk and light on strategy. And somehow, you end up aboard again, not as a ranking officer, not as a leader, just a man with a battered satchel and the kind of haunted eyes that silence a room. You board the HMS Resolute under a cloudy dawn. No fanfare, no salutes. This ship is different, older, her sails patched, her hull groaning with every shift. You think of her not as a lady of the sea, but as a tired mule. You admire her all the more for it. She doesn't pretend to be invincible. The crew is a strange lot, veterans and conscripts, a Welsh gunner who sings to his cannon, a cook who claims he once baked a pie that won him a medal from the Duke of Kent. You smile once when someone tries to nickname you Lucky. It doesn't stick. You set sail. The days pass with the slow, deliberate rhythm of men who know death might be tucked behind every horizon. But nothing happens. Not at first. No storms, no enemy ships, no cursed mists or whispering ghosts. You dare to hope again. One night, you find yourself below deck, hands clasped behind your head, listening to the creak of the beams. You sleep deeply, no nightmares, and then, at dawn sails, enemy sails, the Resolute braces for combat. You take your position. Cannon crews scurry like practiced ants. The sea is eerily calm, always a bad sign. The French frigate approaches fast, too fast. The first shot isn't even cannon fire. It's the sound of a mast splintering from impact. The Resolute reels. Chaos erupts. The deck is smoke and screams and splashed blood. But you don't panic. You've seen worse. You move as if possessed. You direct the younger sailors, haul lines, load powder. The captain notices. He nods once. No words. The fight rages for over an hour. When it ends, the Resolute is barely afloat. But she's afloat. You've won. Historians still debate the exact nature of that battle. Some say it was a lucky broadside that turned the tide. Others credit a sudden wind shift. The truth, likely a dozen small things stitched together by grit and chaos. Your fringe detail tonight. Some seamen believed that if you survived 3 wrecks, you gained the power to speak to the sea. Not literally, of course, but metaphorically to know its moods, its turns. The Welsh gunner insists you've got it, calls you sea tongue. You hate it, but he keeps saying it. The crew's attitude changes. They don't fear you now. They listen. For once, you are not a ghost. You're something else. But peace is fleeting, because the next order's coming. And this time, it will be your greatest test yet. You are standing on the deck again, boots creaking with salt and memory. The Resolute is docked now, bruised but afloat, in a battered harbor fringed with rusting cannons and half-torn flags. There's a heat to the air that seems to sizzle even in the shade, and the smell salt, tar, gunpowder, and burnt bread from some overworked galley hugs your skin like a damp coat. It's a smell you know too well. A letter arrives. Again, folded crisp, corners sharp. You don't even need to open it to know what it says. Orders, deployment, another ship. You sit on a crate for a long while, the letter unopened in your lap. You look up at the sky burning blue, cloudless, indifferent. Around you, sailors laugh, hammer, drink, drag their worries into the barrels of rum or the arms of someone passing. You used to do that too, before everything. You finally unfold the paper, and there it is, HMS Raven, a newer frigate. Fast, they say, agile. She's stationed off Sicily, preparing for an interception. You almost laugh. It's like the Navy is trying to speedrun your demise now. You wonder, briefly, if this is some kind of experiment. How many times can one man survive before he just decides not to anymore? You board the Raven under moonlight. Quietly, you're given no welcome. Just a nod from a quartermaster who looks 12 in an empty hammock beneath a cannon. The crew is young, too young, eager, full of unearned confidence. They joke about legends, ghost ships, sirens. You don't join in. They ask you about the wrecks. You say nothing, but they know, and soon they start to watch you. At first it's curiosity, then discomfort, eventually suspicion. One sailor crosses himself every time you pass. Another keeps a sprig of lavender tucked in his vest, warding off bad spirits. He mutters, "You don't blame them." Here's a true historical detail to ground us in the early 1800s. The Royal Navy was notorious for its superstition. Black cats were lucky unless they jumped ship. Whistling summoned wind or worse, storms. And men who'd survived multiple wrecks were believed to carry a salt soul, no longer wholly human, dangerous to sail with. You wonder, sometimes, if they're right, but the Raven cuts through the Mediterranean like a blade through silk. For weeks, it's nothing but crisp sails, clean skies, and the hum of routine. The crew relaxes. Even the sailor with the lavender stops glaring at you. One night, a fiddler plays on the main deck, and you let yourself sway, just a little, to the rhythm. You smile. You shouldn't have, because calm is a liar. The storm comes with no warning. You know it's coming before the others do. The wind sharpens like a knife edge. The rigging groans with a sound too low for the green ones to notice. You're on deck, When the first clouds punch the stars out of the sky, you grab a lantern, start barking orders. The boatswain frowns, he hasn't received commands, but then the first gust slams the sails like a sledgehammer, and everyone starts to believe you. The sea goes black, not dark black, ink thick and rising. You secure lines, help reef sails, pull a buoy from under a swinging boom. The ship groans, reels, tilts, rights herself. Thunder breaks like cannon fire. Lightning spears the water too close. One strike hits the foremast, splintering it like a matchstick. The Raven shudders, heels hard to starboard. For a moment, just a second, everything stills. Then chaos. The deck floods, barrels roll loose. A cannon comes free and slams into the bulkhead. You're knocked off your feet, nearly crushed by a falling yardarm. The water's up to your knees inside the ship. Men scream. Someone yells. She's going down. You know that sound. The drowning sound. It's not the waves. It's the groan of wood giving up. You claw your way to the main hatch. Help two sailors cut loose a lifeboat. It drops hard into the sea, nearly capsizing on impact. You shove them in. Another man grabs your arm. Come on, you look back. There are still men trapped below. You dive. The hatch is nearly underwater now. You rip it open, swim down into darkness thick as tar. You feel your way through corridors you barely know. Grab one sailor by the collar, another by the wrist. Kick, rise, break the surface, coughing blood and seawater. One makes it to the boat, the other doesn't. You climb aboard last. The Raven disappears stern first, her prow raised like a dying plea. Then she's gone. No explosion, no drama, just a quiet surrender to the black. You're left bobbing in the wreckage with 8 others, 9 souls, out of nearly 100, and somehow you're still one of them. Historians still argue whether the Raven's sinking was due to a faulty keel design or an uncharted shoal hit during the storm. No one agrees. The ship was new, pissed, trusted, but she was yours, and now she's gone. Here's your quirky tidbit sailors used to say a man who couldn't die at sea had iron lungs and a silver tongue. You think, maybe, it's the opposite. You're not surviving because you're strong. You're surviving because something's keeping you here, and you're too afraid to ask what. The lifeboat drifts for 2 days, sunburned, starved. One sailor dies of injuries. The others begin to look at you again, not with suspicion, but with something deeper, something raw, like you're not a man anymore, like you're some spirit of vengeance that won't leave them alone. When a fishing vessel finds you, the first question isn't "Are you all right?" It's "How? How are you still breathing?" You have no answer. You don't even try to pretend anymore. You are brought to port in silence. The harbor master stares at you. Whispers follow you through the alleys. You sleep one night on the floor of a chapel, under a statue of St. Nicholas, the patron of sailors. You don't pray, you just wait, because deep down, you know, this isn't over. You leave the chapel at dawn. The bells don't ring. The priest doesn't stop you. There's a kind of hush around you now, like even the stone underfoot has agreed not to make a sound. You move through the port city as if under a spell. Every creak of a shutter, every snatch of gull cry, every barefoot child darting through the alleys, they all give you wide berth. You are becoming a ghost, but the Admiralty doesn't believe in ghosts. It believes in orders. And so, despite the reports, despite the looks, despite the wreckage trailing you like a breadcrumb path of ruined timber, they summon you again. This time, it's different. Not a posted letter, but a sealed command from a uniformed courier. No explanation, just a ship name, HMS Fury. You read it once, twice. A name like that, it should have been a warning. Fury, as if they're no longer pretending this is about honor or duty. As if even the naming gods have grown tired of subtlety. You don't pack much, just a locket that isn't yours anymore, and the boots you wore on the first wreck. Everything else can be replaced or lost again. The Fury is a real beast. Sleek lines, copper sheathing, a hull that gleams with recent pitch. She's not just a warship, she's a show of force. You recognize the type, the kind meant to intimidate at first sight. Not built to survive the sea, but to make the sea think twice about trying. Commanded by Captain Langdon, young, too polished, too confident, the kind of man who still believes he's writing his legacy in real time. He shakes your hand with the grip of someone who wants to be remembered. You give him a flat look and say nothing. You take your place among the crew. This time, there's no mockery, no superstition, just a quiet, almost reverent distance. Some of them know who you are. Others have only heard pieces. The man who survived the Birkenhead, the Resolute, the Raven, the Unkillable, the Salt-Stitched Soul. Even Langdon calls you Mr. Everard, though it's not your rank or title. It's just what they've started to say, like naming a storm. The Fury departs under red skies. You murmur the old sailor's rhyme to yourself. Red sky at morning. Sailor, take warning. But no one else seems to notice. They're too busy adjusting uniforms, running drills, hauling line. Young hands, smooth faces. You try not to get to know them. The mission is simple. Intercept a French convoy off the Peloponnese coast. The Fury is fast, armed to the teeth, and accompanied by 2 smaller ships. There's confidence in the air, the kind you know doesn't last. 3 days in, you're the first to spot the smoke on the horizon. The French are there, 2 brigs and a larger frigate. You brace for cannon fire, for wind, for bloods, but it's the wind that betrays you first. A sudden, brutal shift. The Fury lurches into the path of a reef, hidden just beneath the surface. The lookout cries out, but it's too late. The hull tears open with the scream of tortured wood. You're thrown from your station. Sailors tumble like dice across the deck. One crashes into the capstan and doesn't move again. Captain Langdon bellows orders, but the sea doesn't listen. The Fury begins to list, her belly already taking water. The smaller ships peel away, trying to maneuver clear of the reef line. But the enemy has seen your stumble. The French frigate adjusts course. You try to rally the crew, secure rigging, form a line, grab the wounded. But something feels different this time. The water doesn't rise like before. It rips. A deep groan echoes from below. Not a crack or a leak, a full, violent rupture. A sound like the ocean has just swallowed a cannonball and wants to spit it back out. They're shouting now, panicked and high-pitched. A young midshipman sobs openly while dragging an unconscious mate toward the quarterdeck. You help him. You move like you always do in disaster now. Not fast, not frantic, just methodical, like a man counting the steps to his own grave. Langdon is still shouting when the mizzenmast comes down. It crushes the helm and sends 3 men overboard in a tangle of canvas and blood. One of them screams your name before vanishing beneath the froth. You don't respond because something else has caught your eye. A shape in the water, though not a ship, not debris, something moving. You blink, rub your eyes. Nothing's there now. Just a flicker of movement, like the sea itself is watching. Historians still argue whether the Fury hit a reef or was sabotaged. Some whisper about sea mines, others about bad charts. But one old logbook found in a bottle years later mentions something unnatural in the deep. It was dismissed as delirium. You're not so sure. The ship won't last another hour. You know it. Langdon knows it. He finally gives the order to abandon. You help load the wounded onto the last boat, even though it's already too heavy. You lash empty barrels together into a makeshift float. It's all muscle now. No hope, just action. And then the Fury shudders one last time and begins to roll. You leap, cold. Not the surface cold of wind on wet skin bone cold, like the sea has fingers, and they're slipping beneath your ribs. You fight your way up, grabbing splinters and rope, the world around you a blur of foam and screams. When you surface, there's fire on the water. A lantern must have shattered. The oil floats, flames dancing like wicked sprites across the waves. You see Langdon clinging to a spar, his face pale. You reach him, drag him to the barrels. He's shaking. Why do you keep living? He croaks. You don't answer. You just stare out at the water, where the Fury has already disappeared. You're rescued the next day. Of a crew of 140, only 19 survive. You're one of them. Again, you're brought to a hospital tent. You're cleaned, bandaged. Your file gets thicker. Somewhere, your name is being underlined in ink. Admirals whisper about you. Some say it's luck. Others, madness. The official reports leave out the shape you saw, but not your mind. You dream of it now, long and coiling, watching, waiting. Here's your odd detail for the night in certain old sailor traditions. If someone cheated death too many times at sea, it was said the ocean would send something to reclaim what was owed. A leviathan, a sea widow, a spirit without skin. No one agreed on what it looked like, just that you'd know when it came. You wonder now if maybe, just maybe, it already has, and it's not done with you yet. You never see the sea the same way again. After the Fury, you're discharged not dishonorably, not with ceremony, just quietly, like a misfiled document, finally being acknowledged. Administrative release, they call it. No one dares say it aloud, but you can feel it in every glance. You're bad luck now, a walking omen. 1 wreck might be misfortune. 2, a cursed streak. But 3, that makes you legend, and not the comforting kind. They send you home with a small pension and a note stamped with the crest of the Admiralty. It says thank you, but it feels like goodbye. You burn it in the fireplace that night and watch the wax seal bubble like a closing wound. You try to live a normal life. If such a thing still exists for you, there's a coastal town that takes you in. Fisher folk. For the most part, people who trust the sea because they have to, not because they think it loves them. You find a cottage with a warped roof and a door that always sticks. You fix it. You even plant a few herbs by the window lavender. Mostly, it helps with the dreams, because the dreams, oh, they don't stop. They're not nightmares exactly. Just reminders of the cold, the silence, the sucking pressure of the deep. Sometimes you hear names you never learned. Other times, you wake up gasping, convinced you're still underwater, tangled in rigging, lungs full of salt. You walk the shore every morning. The sea never speaks to you directly, but it's always there, rolling, watching, and you always greet it, not out of superstition, but respect, like nodding to an old rival you're not quite done with. One day, many years later, a boy finds you on the beach. He's about 10, gap-toothed, barefoot, holding a busted spyglass like it's a family heirloom. You're sitting on your usual driftwood perch, carving a scrap of whalebone into something vaguely bird-shaped. He squints at you. Are you him? You don't answer right away. You know, he persists. The man from the ships, the one who can't sink. You offer him a piece of dried fish from your pocket. He accepts it like a sacred relic. Do you still sail? He asks. You shake your head. Not anymore. He looks disappointed. Then, as kids do, he tilts his head and asks something ridiculous. Did you make a deal with the ocean? You pause. You think about it. You remember the 3 wrecks: the Birkenhead, the Resolute, the Fury. You remember every timber of timber snapping, every soul you tried to save, every one you couldn't. No, you say finally, but I think it made a deal with me. Historians still argue whether you were just improbably lucky, uniquely skilled, or something more. Your naval record is real, archived in brittle folders and faded ink, but the whispers around it, those are harder to trace. Here's a fringe tidbit for you. In 1902, an eccentric scholar named Felix Dunn published a short monograph called The Man Who the Sea Refused. In it, he argues that certain individuals are karmic balancers, souls marked not for death, but to bear witness, to survive repeatedly, not for glory, but for memory. The book never sold well, but it found a strange second life in spiritualist circles. Some thought you were one of these balancers. Others claimed you were a ghost who never realized he'd died. You never read the book, but you hear about it. Eventually, the boy visits often after that. He brings little gifts: sea glass, rusty coins, a feather he swears came from a phoenix. In return, you tell him pieces of your story, not all of it. Never all, just flashes and glimpses. One day, he asks you what it was like, really like. You close your eyes and describe the cold, the impossible, aching cold of seawater rushing into your boots, through your collar, into your bones. You describe the sounds, how a ship can groan like a living thing, how fire on the water crackles like laughter, how the quiet after an explosion isn't silence, but absence. You tell him about hands you tried to hold on to, names you never got, the feeling of watching a mast fall in slow motion, as if time itself were mourning. He listens without flinching. He's braver than you were. You look at him barefoot, scabby knees, hair full of sand, and you wonder what the ocean has planned for him. You hope it's kinder, but you suspect it won't be. The sea doesn't make promises, only arrangements. One morning, much later, you find a note tucked into your doorframe. It's from the boy now, a man. Gone sailing, it says. Will be back before the wind changes. You stand there, salt in your throat, staring at the handwriting. You wait 5 days, then 10. He never returns. And just like that, The ocean has taken someone else. You light a candle, you toss the spyglass he left into the tide. You don't cry, but you sit there a long time, letting the waves lap at your boots. This is where the story starts to fade. There are no more naval records after that, no more sightings. Some say you died quietly in that cottage, alone. Others think you boarded one final vessel under a false name, chasing the horizon until the sea decided it was finally time. There's a gravestone in the village cemetery, simple and clean. No birth date, no death, just your name, and beneath it, 3 ships down, 1 man standing. The wind wears the letters slowly away. Sometimes, the townsfolk say they see you walking the shore still hat low, boots damp, always looking east. When children ask who you are, they get different answers. Some say a hero, some say a ghost, but the older ones, the ones who knew, they just nod and whisper, the man the sea couldn't drown. So now, dear listener, let your thoughts drift with the tide. Picture the endless sea dark, patient, unknowable, not cruel, not kind, just ancient. Imagine its waves brushing gently against the hull of a ship long since lost, the creak of old timbers echoing like a lullaby from beneath the foam. Close your eyes and feel the slow rock of the water, as if you're safely adrift, untethered from every worry. The stars are out tonight, scattered like shattered glass across the velvet sky. Somewhere, a gull calls softly, then fades into stillness. The story of our sailor, our survivor, isn't just about luck or fate. It's about the quiet strength it takes to rise each time the world pulls you under, to carry memory like a sail, catching every gust of pain and wonder. And perhaps, in some small way, this story now lives in you. So if your dreams take you to distant shores tonight, or if you find yourself adrift in the currents of sleep, just remember, some souls are made to weather the storm, and some, like our unnamed mariner, are shaped by it. Let the calm settle into your breath. Let the waves hush the noise of the day. You've heard the tale. You've crossed the wreckage. Now it's time to rest. The story is over. See you tomorrow night. Sweet dreams.